This is Shelf Space. Getting onto the grocery shelf is a massive win for any brand, but staying there and growing a listing fast, that's where the magic is. This conversation is with Brittany from Hive Retail Solutions about the high-stakes world of merchandising. We explore the persistent battle against out of stocks, the limitations of automated ordering systems, how to approach seasonal planning, and why perfect data often fails when it hits the real world of the retail aisle. And before I hit the big go button, I want to give a galactic shout out to our shelf space partners, Fasken, Benchmark 60, TD, Pacific Coast Distribution, Rima, and Picnic Creative. Okay, here's my conversation with Brittany. Brittany, I'm excited about this. You and I have danced around the idea of recording for quite a while, and now we finally get to do it. So I'm so glad. And in classic fashion here, I'm going to kick you off with a big question. If you look to the future, what's the innovation you would love to see in the grocery store?
Unfortunately, the innovation, well, thank you for having me, first of all. The innovation I would want to see in a grocery store might eliminate Hive. Well, I think we would just pivot and work around it. But the biggest challenge I see in merchandising and just being a brand on a shelf is out of stocks. Doesn't matter how frequently you're there, they still happen. And yes, we are a team that can help manage them, but they still happen. So just to sit in the shoes of a brand, what I would love to see for them, knowing how much money and energy goes into getting on that shelf in the first place, is some sort of, I don't know if it's by weight, like knowing whether or not the product is actually on the shelf, because there's CAO, like computer automated ordering systems that exist within some of these larger chains. And in theory, they're supposed to count what leaves the store, and then there's supposed to be a reorder point. I don't necessarily know that it's working. I mean, I'm sure it's got like some efficacy, but it's not 100%. But if there was something that could actually see what's on shelf or feel what's on shelf, and then make an alert or notify something that it needs to be restocked immediately. And if it's not restocked, then it needs to be reordered. Like, I don't know what this thing is, but it's going to help with out of stocks.
I love it. That's a good tech. I was in a parquet the other day and they had sensors to tell you how many spots were open. It was broken because it said there were 17 spots available when in fact there were 0 spots available. But the spirit of it was, when it was all working, that these little sensors could tell which spots didn't have cars in them. So yeah, maybe there's a relatively simple tech play that could figure that out.
Yeah. It's just like and then it would be visibility on shelf. Like you can actually see if your product's there, and if not, why not? Like, how do we fix it?
So for listeners that maybe know a little or not so much about what it is that you guys do, give us the Reader's Digest version of Hive and the way that you guys work with brands.
So we call ourselves a sales and merchandising team. I think we've evolved quite a bit over the last 4 years we've been in business now, almost officially. I think our birthday is like at the end of this month. Actually, I think we just had our birthday. I should know that. But we're essentially an extension of your team in any way, shape, or form. From a massive project, like we're covering coast to coast, every store that you're in on a monthly basis, or you have like a simple project that you just need help with retail execution on. Throw your feet on the street. Building the buzz for your brand and retail.
And feet on the street, you have a team across the country. You are not just a small team. You are a fast-growing team.
Fast growing. We're like bunnies over here, Corwin, in the springtime.
That's a weird analogy.
I know.
Do you want to explain? No, don't.
I won't go into the details.
Amanda is making a bigger family, it seems, every year, but that's a different discussion.
Different discussion for sure. I don't know. I live near Jericho Beach in Vancouver, and there's just like so many bunnies there in the springtime. We started, just to give you some context, like last year, January, so 2025, January, we had 18 people and we closed the year with 70. And I feel as though we'll be closer to 200 by the time we close this year. So we're fast movers over here.
Do we put in a plug for HR support?
I actually had that in my notes. Don't forget to say we're always hiring brand ambassadors, merchandisers, and lots of like head office roles are opening up too as we scale as well.
I love it. Well, it's been great to see you guys grow. And I have to admit, it was maybe even 2 or 3 years before you guys came on the scene. I didn't really fully understand the landscape in retail and people like you and your team the role that you play. And so, for example, when I first started talking with you guys and you guys were talking about store checks, I'm like, store checks? Like, what is that? And I didn't really understand that, whether it's a promotion or a secondary display or a pop-up or a special load in, or some activity going on, some trade spend happening, chances of it actually happening at all the stores that it's meant to happen, A, were very, very low, and B, that the brands were getting charged for those activities, but yet they weren't taking place, which seemed really unfair and horrible. And so just seeing in action what you guys have been doing and the way that you're helping brands grow. And this is a little bit of a little side story. I was talking to our friend Scott, who was bragging about you guys at his former brand. And he just basically said, you guys just drove so much impact from a sales perspective. And it was just so tangible. It was just like, well, we invested in Hive and this is how they helped drive sales. And it was because you guys were there in so many stores, taking care of the brand, taking care of the product, helping the store kind of work with this brand that they couldn't do without you.
Yeah. God bless Scott. I love that guy.
Right. So when your team's going in there, obviously making sure the shelf is stocked, making sure that the price promotion is running if it's supposed to be running, what are some of the other things that your team is doing to make sure that the brand's winning on shelf?
We're building the relationship on behalf of, I think the audience we're talking to here would be mostly founders, maybe. Like, we're building that relationship on your behalf. And so that when we walk out of the store, the people left in the stores, the grocery managers, the retail staff, anybody that we've come in contact with are experts as well on behalf of your brand, because that's so important. Decisions are made in a second at staring at the shelf. And typically you kind of go in with an idea of what you're looking for. But if you're not going to spend hours researching while you're in store. You might do that research at home before you get to the store. But when you get there, let's say you're looking for a vegan protein, we want that retail manager or that area manager, category manager to recommend you, because they themselves have now become a brand ambassador of your brand, because we've been showing up consistently, educating them on your product.
That's so cool. And you guys work, not only your team, your professional team, but you also pair that effort with some crowdsourcing work to make sure that stores, there's thousands of stores. You don't have thousands of employees yet, but you're able to use crowdsourcing to address some of these concerns. How does that work?
Yeah, well, I think you're referring of our field agent partnership, the Find and Fix. So it's a really cool concept. And I think there's a really specific project that we can do with the Find and Fix. And you're right, to your point, we can access their crowdsourcing team, just like 80,000 people across the country, in just a couple moments. So if you wanted to know whether or not your PDQ or your shipper or your promo was active, we could deploy their team and, in record time and get that information back, and then use our team, the Fix-It people, to go in and actually address that one problem.
And a lot of brands, especially the emerging brands, they come into the retailer conversation, and I know they don't want to come off this way, but they often come off like, hey, can you do me a favor and can you list our product? Can you do me this favor? But of course, in reality, brands need to solve problems for retailers. What are the problems that you see brands actually addressing? Like, where does the scale tip towards the brand that is saying, all right, we understand this category really, really well, and we're going to give you, the retailer, something to drive more profit out of this planogram?
So I feel like I heard two questions in there. One, like, how can a brand go into a store and help solve the store's problem? Or from a sales perspective, what problem are we solving?
Yeah, let's go. Like, how is the brand solving a problem for the store?
This goes back to everything we don't know why I want to use the word preach, but preach about at Hive. Like, it's all about relationships, right? Have you ever had to ask a stranger to do you a favor? There's usually some reluctancy because they don't really know you. So what I would always recommend anybody who's in store, whether that's the founder or the salesperson, someone you've hired to represent you in store, is focus on that relationship and don't necessarily just solve a problem with your brand, but offer a lending hand. If you can tell that person might have a lot on their plate, or you see some inventory there that needs to be worked, offer to help them, or say, hey, I've got a free case of product for you. I just want you to try it. Like, just build that relationship with them by showing up and supporting them consistently. And then when you actually do need a favor from them, whether that's listing a new product or getting a secondary or adding a facing or placing an order, whatever that might be, they trust you because you've shown up and you've proven that you're there to just not only help them, but see them succeed.
And there's a lot of data coming at brands all the time, swimming in data. And on almost every conversation I've had so far with SHELFSPACE, data comes up. What's the non-negotiable data that you feel that brands really need to be paying attention to?
Non-negotiable data that brands need to be paying attention to. I mean, what is your velocity? Does your product actually move off shelf? You can do this like in some simple ways and build some case studies around it. We've done this internally, like when we say secure a secondary for a brand, strictly on our relationship with the store and then with the brand, we'll take a look at what the sales number were for that week and just kind of evaluate the lift and then use that as a case study when we're asking for things in other stores. Like, hey, I know this works. I did this with, let's say Songs in Dunbar, and this was the lift when I got X. So just having that as a backup, I think, is a good tip.
Yeah, that's a good one. There's often a disconnect between the decisions that get made at HQ in Toronto and some outpost store in Lethbridge, Ontario. Is there a way that the brands can address that? I know that, there's a lot of people in these scenarios, a lot of brokers, and there's sales leaders and there's CEOs, and there's always usually a lot of voices, but that disconnect, it can really torpedo a brand's success in a region. Do you see sort of a way that a brand can mitigate that risk?
Honestly, it's by having folks like Hive or some sort of representation in store before it happens. Honestly, this is $1 million question, Gordon. If I knew how to solve that problem from head office to store level, I would be a multimillionaire. I don't know what the answer is to fix that, but what we've seen really helps is having feet on the street and having representation in store. Like if you know you've just paid for a massive promotion executing in any major retailer across the country, make sure you're in there in advance, have those conversations with the retailer at store level and say, hey, this is coming up. I'd love to work with you on, maybe securing an end cap or doing something really big to make sure that it gets executed. And then obviously making sure you're in store when it's supposed to be live to ensure whether or not it actually did happen. We've had cases where things are supposed to be executed and they're not, and we provide that data back to the brand and the brand takes it back to head office and they figure out the finance piece from there. They'll either reissue and do it again later in the year, or they'll refund those promo dollars.
Yeah. And that can be hard if it's tied to a campaign that's sort of there's a specific date, time, event, activity that it's connected to.
Like you're trying to capture back to health in January and it doesn't execute. Well, you might be waiting another year before you do it.
Exactly. So one of the balancing acts I see and hear constantly is the salespeople want marketing to help and marketing people want the salespeople to do their job. And there's this sort of we can't market without a lot of availability. And then the salespeople are like, well, we can't get availability without the brand being pushed forward. How do you see at the shelf level when there's a marketing spend and you're like, okay, I see the marketing spend over there and it's having a direct correlation to what's happening on shelf? Is there an example that stands out to you or just a sort of a lesson learned that you've seen, how that's going to work really well?
Yes. I think this goes back to just out of stocks and getting ahead of and visibility, making sure the product's actually there. If you've put promo dollars or marketing spend in a campaign that's coming up in, say, April, get into stores in March and educate the retailers. Hey, this is happening. I want to make sure there's enough product on shelf. Can you get orders in ahead of time? Or let me know what you're considering from a volume perspective.
And I often hear brands, they're in Q1 and they're talking about Q2. And it's you should be talking about next year's Q2. And to that point, okay, maybe not next year, but we were at CHFA, bumped into you guys there, and you guys did something that I hadn't seen. Maybe it's just because I'm a relatively new guy into this space, but you guys did a Christmas area. And it was February, middle of February, and you guys have a Let's Get Christmas going, and you had a big Christmas area. Talk to us about that. How did it go? How did the buyers respond? What was the impact that you guys saw come from such a dedicated experience around Christmas buying in February?
Well, there were so many comments from people walking the show floor, like, can we move on from Christmas? Like, we were just here. But the reality is Christmas happens in June and July. So the concept behind that, and this was Lindsay Walker from CHFA's brainchild that we were so grateful we got to bring to life, was we're not thinking about Christmas in November, December, or even October. It really starts, the planning starts in June, July. And I actually had one retailer say they actually got their first pre-book a week before they saw us at Deck the Aisles at CHFA. So mid-February, they saw a pre-book for Christmas. That's really what goes into everything behind the scenes. Like, there's forecasting and planning that needs to happen. In reality, that's when those bookings are going out. So it was really cool to be a part of this because, like you said, no one else had done it before. But the retailers understood it. Like, everybody who's kind of behind the scenes and understands like the merchandising calendar for the year, they understood and they thought it was executed quite well. And I think our team did a phenomenal job. Like, they knocked it out of the park. And I think it brought awareness to that time of year when sometimes people are late to the thinking and late to the game as far as pre-books and stuff are concerned. So I think it went really well.
It felt like a level up. It felt very professional. And, just like I said earlier, just so many brands are kind of running they're shooting from the hip. They're doing everything sort of very knee-jerk reaction, or they're proud of themselves for thinking a month or two in advance, when in reality, it should be further out.
Yeah. When it comes to working with Hive, like, we love helping with Christmas execution. But, in reality, Christmas execution starts to happen in October. So we need to be chatting in, again, this summer on what does this look like? What does our team need? And when are we actually going to be executing? Like, December, you're really just maintaining, and December 25th hits and we're starting to mark down and clear the floor, really.
And if you're top of mind in the spring, then those conversations in summer get a lot easier if you've already sort of got that mental capacity, filled up in the buyers. Let's go back to the shelf for a sec. What are some of the subtle early warning signs that a brand is in trouble in a store? And can they mitigate that? So that if there's a data point that's slipping, if there's some feedback that's not working, or someone's grumpy, or there's a competitor kind of squeezing out, what are some of those early signs that a brand needs to make sure they're not delisted or sort of diminished on the planogram, that they can get ahead of it and repair the situation?
Yeah, I think velocity, like sell-through. So if you have access to your sell-through data, that's something you could take a look at. Expiry, if you're getting bills or, bill backs for expired product, tells me that it's not moving on shelf either. And things you can do to mitigate that is, one last thing. Also, just like your facings reducing can tell me that maybe a competitor is in there trying to take over your space. So getting in there and defending your space is super important. And I think this just goes back to having somebody in the field and building those relationships for you. Whether you have like one salesperson and they hit all the stores and they just do that on a bi-monthly rotation, just making sure they can do it. Or if you have a team of people, I think if you do have a velocity issue, trying to get ahead of it, asking questions, getting some consumer insights. I know there's some great products out there for consumer insights. And also just trying to have conversations with the retail managers, like, hey, I've noticed, my velocities are kind of low. Do you have any suggestions? It could also go back to merchandising as well. Is your product in the right place where people are looking for it? So if we have a brand that's like struggling with their velocities at store level, I always suggest, we're always looking for secondary placements, but the first thing is like, is this product in the space of the store where you're looking for it? And if not, can we cross merchandise it in that section that you would go to look for it? And then we look at the sales dollars. Okay, did we see a lift when we moved it? If so, like, either can we take that information to head office if it's a head office account, or can we take that information to the retail manager and have it permanently moved because that location is going to sell better?
And one of the things I never really thought about until heard you guys talking about it a while ago is that you guys find some really weird places to put product. You'll see a gap somewhere in whatever, and you're like, hey, can we fill that gap? It's actually a really creative way to go about it, because sometimes, no one wants to see an empty spot, especially if it's going to be empty for a while. And there can be complementary space that's unpaid for, but you get to put product there. Are you guys doing that a lot? Is that a sort of a normal thing, or those outlier moments where you are jumping categories, but you're putting product in an empty spot?
I think we're always putting products in empty spots, and the spot equals space to sell. I don't know. I mean, I personally am, and I know the team is as well. I think I love cross merchandising. I love finding opportunities on the floor to watch our brands grow. And it's all about like interrupting the path to purchase, right? If you put something in a spot, no one would think that there should be a product. You get them thinking like, oh, what is this? Should I buy it? So we do it a lot.
So let me ask you about the checkouts and the activity in and around the checkout. So we all know that impulse purchase. We all know the gums and the candy bars and the strips of Frito-Lays. we all know, and now there's a lot of coolers with like sodas and whatever. So I'm curious to hear what you think about that area. But more than that, the large displays that are sort of beyond the till. Here, I'll give you an example. Sorry, this is so specific, but there's a Thrifty Foods in my areas where I go most of the time. And for 2 years, there was I forget the brand, it's a Ontario chip company. I think it's La Cucina. Am I saying that right? It's a tortilla chip company.
Yeah.
I think that's the name.
Yeah.
They had a massive, I'm talking like 30 by 20 foot display of their chips for 2 years. And I always bought from that display, always. And when I would see them in the aisle, I might grab one because I'm like, oh, that's the chip I want. And then I get to the till, I'm like, oh, okay, I need a second one. It obviously worked. No one would do a promotion or a thing for 2 years if it didn't work. So what's the landscape like in and around the till? Are you seeing trends or changes in that real estate?
I don't really see any changes. I see lots of displays beyond the till. For me, it's not my number one place to put a display because it's after the purchase. Unless the flow of the store brings them past there, I think you really have to evaluate the footprint of the store. But I would prefer to see displays on this side of the cash. But I know there are some pretty epic displays out there. I think the ones I use, there's a Safeway right by my house, and they always have massive displays beyond, and I always touch them, and they're usually empty. They're usually empty boxes, which I love because you're getting eyes on the brand, and they make an impact. But I have noticed that that one particular store, they've actually brought the big ones just before their self-checkouts, and then they still have the empty one on the other side. So it's not my favorite place to merchandise things. Anything that's after I've already paid, the chances of me coming back and buying those chips is probably quite low. That said, if the flow of the store brings them past that spot, I think it's a great spot to merchandise.
It worked for me. And I can also imagine that, I think it's our friend Kenny Vanici talks about sort of like dead zones in grocery stores. And sometimes that's a good way to leverage a dead zone. And sometimes you have to pay for it, and sometimes you don't have to pay for it. So
Doran on our team talks about dead zones a lot too, because he comes from Whole Foods, and before Whole Foods he was at Safeway. And he says when he was at Whole Foods, he would just stand in one spot and watch the foot traffic of the store to watch where his dead zones were. It's an interesting way to go about it.
So this is total bias on my side, but one of my concerns is that local programs end up in dead zones. But I don't want to pick on that right now, but I do want to ask, the brands that are going into the local programs, what are they doing to win in those programs? And I would imagine ultimately get out of those programs so that they're in the proper aisles with some confidence, sooner than later.
I mean, this goes back to relationships. Anybody in a local program, I'll speak to BC because we're in BC, they have to have somebody kind of knocking on doors and building relationships to get the product into the store. Once the product's into the store, you want to make sure it's merchandised correctly, unless it gets merchandised correctly from the get-go, which is fantastic. But again, this could go back to the sales data. Like if you build a really great relationship with, I'll use the Safeway by my house, the manager of the Safeway by my house, and you're able to sell your product, then just ask them like, hey, how did my product do last week? They might be able to show you on the gut, like, oh, you only sold 2 units. And then you can take a look at where it's merchandised. Sometimes in store, there's specific spots that they have to merchandise local products, but there's usually discretionary space elsewhere. Like if you're a beverage product, if you are showing up consistently and building that relationship with that manager, I don't see why they wouldn't let you put your product in the cooler as well, which obviously you'd see sales lift there, but you could kind of monitor it and kind of show him like, hey, it's working. But the one thing about local program products, a lot of them, apart from building that relationship and actually selling in every single door because it's not coming down from head office, is reorder support. You want to make sure you're showing up and making it easy for them to reorder whatever. If you're doing DSD or you're working with a distributor, like lowering that barrier for them to be able to get your product again would be super helpful. Like if you have that relationship, send a quick text. Do you need an order this week? How are you doing for sales? Or pop in. That's even better. The one thing I've learned about locals programs is that a lot of them are driven by promotions. And a lot of the store, like the floor space, is reserved for promotional items. So if you're in the locals program, you're not on promotion, you don't have a home on the shelf, you're really only able to be on the floor if you're on promotion. So again, that goes back to the relationships. If you have a really great relationship with that manager in that store, work with them to try to get a spot secured on the shelf so you can live there permanently. But every store is they get to make their own decisions about local products. So it's really up to them if they have a space for you on the shelf and how your relationship is with them. Like when we work with local products, we have these amazing relationships already, and we know how to work with the promo calendars to make sure that we're selling in when it makes sense and that the product is on display during the promotion periods, but it's also got a home on the shelf.
Yeah, local programs are a bit of a zip folder for me too. So I didn't know I was tapping the zip folder on you for that one. That's funny.
I'm so passionate about the local programs because when we started Hive, we really were working with a lot of local products, especially in Safeway. Obviously, our reach has expanded and our portfolio has expanded, but I got to learn them pretty well in her early days. Yeah.
That's cool. One of the things that stands out to me, we talk about, relationship. I get it. You're doing good. You're hitting that note consistently. So, and I totally get it. So 2 questions around that. The first one is around the brand's story. I mean, you guys are representing the brand. So you're sort of relaying the story of the brand. But when a founder or someone really like one of very few employees in a brand, when they're telling the story, it's intimate, it's personal, it typically gets a lot longer, a lot more elaborate storytelling. Where does story come in when you guys are working to get a brand or a specific product line to really thrive in store? Like, are you guys relaying this narrative, the storytelling aspect?
Yeah, always. I think whenever we get the opportunity to talk to a store manager about any of our brands, we're really selling the story and how it came to be. And that's the passion that we get from founders and from brands really does trickle down to our teams because we do brand training calls and we invite the founder or the salesperson, whoever it is that's representing the brand, onto these calls to share their wisdom and their passion for their product to our team so that they can be as passionate in the field. And I think that's one thing I say sets us apart is that we truly have an incredible team and they're so insanely passionate about what it is they're doing. So yeah, definitely. We're sharing that story at any chance we can.
I think it's one of the concerns that brands have when they bring on vendors and suppliers and professionals that are outside of their immediate staff is like, well, what if they don't get it? What if they don't say what we say or talk about the brand the way that we talk about the brand? So,
I mean, we do our best. I think we do a really good job at it. I mean, we always equipped our teams with all the resources they need to be those feet on the street and speak with passion and heart.
So the other thing I was going to ask you about story is that does your team hand out collateral, like one-pagers? Are there any physical items that you guys feel like, okay, the brand needs to supply us with these things so that we can effectively do our job?
Yeah, one thing we started doing pretty early on was asking brands to create scannable sell sheets. So we've got sell sheets. Everybody knows what a sell sheet is, but including that barcode is just next level game changer. So everybody's working with guns now, right? So they can just easily scan the barcode off of the sell sheet. And our team will usually just keep it on their phone and zoom in and be like, scan this if it's out of stock. And it's done in 30 seconds. So there's no barrier there. We try not to leave behind much. We've got little Hive retail solutions, notepads that will leave a cute note on it for the manager if we miss them on that visit. But I think I'm sell sheets for sure. I don't think they're ever going away. Just they might evolve electronically. You can scan from your phone.
Yeah, they're not going anywhere.
Samples. Oh, sorry. Hang on a second. Samples. I don't know why that didn't come to it.
You felt it was implied.
Samples. We call our team sample clause. Like, just leave samples, as many samples as you possibly can for your managers. It just, not only do they get to then try your product, but it just makes them feel so special that they get to be a part of your world and that you're thinking of them and you want to share with them your product. Our team gets tons of samples from our brands, and the one mandate I have is like sample clause. Just always be leaving samples. I think it just lights up their day.
I love it. I was helping my friends at Dry Goods, the non-alc brand, and we put a couple cans actually in a tube, kind of like a whiskey tube, but we put 2 cans of beer with a sell sheet and a business card and a little note, and it was branded. And it felt like we were dropping off something special that they hadn't seen before. It was sat on their desks or in their break room. Is it something different?
I love that. That's so genius. You would think of something like that. It's so cool.
I like things in tubes. I like kaleidoscopes. You know, when Pringles came out, when I was very little, or maybe Pringles, I don't remember when it came out. Nonetheless, I remember eating a lot of Pringles. I'm sorry to my body. But I love walking around with a tube of chips. It was fantastic.
I just learned that the reason we eat so many Pringles is because apparently they're already digested. This is what someone told me on the weekend, so I think it's funny that you brought it up. And that's why we don't get full, because they're already digested.
I haven't bought them in a long time, but they just delivered salt to my body. I just crave salt. Yeah. Different medical issue there. Last question for you here. Favorite grocery shopping experience anywhere in the world? Where was it? Where have you loved shopping?
Oh, we don't have it here. I love Marks and Spencer's in the UK. And it's just, I don't know what it is. Their grab and go section is like next level. I can't pick favorites. They're all so good.
Yeah, that's a little unfair to me to ask you to pick. Yeah, exactly. That's why I gave you the world, so you could pick someone outside of Canada that doesn't get you in trouble. Yeah, there you go.
And I do like being able to walk to grocery stores. I think that's fantastic. I mean, that just speaks to
the urban life. We live in the suburbs now, so we do have to drive a couple minutes, and it's I miss walking to the grocery store. Really do. Yeah, I
know, and I like that I can choose like whatever I want. Okay, the world is my oyster. Do I want Fresh to Eat today? Do I want Safeway? Do I want Whole Foods? What do I want?
I love
it's fantastic.
I love it. Brittany, appreciate what you do and your team and the way you guys do it. You bring so much joy to these, I get to see you mostly at trade shows, but you, obviously in every aisle that you guys are in, you bring a lot of happiness, and I appreciate it. And I know a lot of brands that you work with that are so grateful to have you as a part of their team. So great job. And I'm glad we could have this chat.
Oh, well, thank you. Thanks for having me. And I always love seeing you. And I was so excited when you asked me to be a part of this, because I am.
Awesome. Have a good one. Thanks for listening to this episode of Shelf Space. If you like what you hear, I would be eternally grateful for a 5-star rating and a quick share on social. Your support means the world to me and our partners, TD, Fasken, Rima, Pacific Coast Distribution, Picnic Creative, and Benchmark 60. For bonus content and resources from our sponsors, go to shelfspacepodcast.com. I'm Corwin Hebert. I'm glad we're on this rocket ship together. I'll see you in the future.